Guys, welcome to Euan, Me and the ISD podcast. I'm your host, Euan Blackman, and as part of our 3-video series, we have with us today Pamela Hughes, who is running for RISD Board of Trustee, District 2. So by way of introduction, Pam, welcome to the show. Please just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Definitely. Yes, my name's Pamela Hughes, and like Euan said, I'm running for RISD School Board, Single Member District 2. A little about me, I grew up here in Richardson. I'm a product of RISD schools. I went to Terrace Elementary, Richardson Junior High, and then graduated from the Richardson High School Law Magnet.
Oh, wow. Well, cheers to that.
Yes. My dad was also a product of RISD schools. He went on to teach and was a principal here in the district. And today I've got 2 children who are students in RISD. I have a 6th grader at Yale and a 4th grader at Dartmouth.
Super.
So very rooted here in the community, and at least another decade now as a RISD parent.
Awesome. Love that. Love those folks who utilize our services and are a part of being the solution to making them even better. Which brings us to our first question today, which is student discipline has become the #1 concern for teachers and parents. And so what powers or responsibilities would you, as, say, a board member, be able to utilize in helping to find a solution to this difficult, somewhat concerning and downright horrible situation we have, as most folks are well aware of, with kids interacting?
Yeah, so student safety across the board is something I'm hearing a lot about, especially as I've been out knocking on doors, meeting folks from across District 2. And at first, when I heard student safety, I was thinking more external threats, but you're absolutely right that discipline is kind of lumped in there too with the student safety and the district's responsibility to provide an environment that is safe and reliably conducive for learning. And so this is a spot where I think we could benefit from real clarity from the top down. That way it's not left to a teacher in the classroom to be making decisions about here's what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Here's the response to various behaviors, but that really needs to come from the board down, because what I'm hearing from educators too is they want that clarity, they want that cover.
100%.
So that they know what they're supposed to be living into in their day-to-day.
For sure. And I know some of my teacher friends who watch this will be curious to see how we handle the discipline. For example, when there's a behavior problem in your classroom, the teacher sends them to the office, they give them a lollipop and come back. Some of that is exaggerated for sure, but at the same time, it's emblematic of the frustration I think teachers feel. So in looking for those solutions, I know you and I talk off camera for sure about some of the things your father got involved with back at his high school when he was principal. We shall leave the names out of these places, but it was a Richardson High School, so there's only 4 to pick from. And if you know, you know, right? So good stuff. But some of those solutions to difficult problems, because I always say it's an 80-20 rule, right? 80% of our students are just fine. They do a great job. They come to school, they do what they should do, and they move right along. But there's a concerning plurality of students that just are not interested in that. And one of the things I think we're trialing right now, or trying to get the district to do, is like a task force idea. What are your thoughts on that? If you could expand a little bit on how you would then use those powers as a school board member to make this community. You're running for the Berkner High School area. How do you make that school a destination school?
Yes. Yeah, I want to make sure that all of Richardson schools, to your point, are destination schools. And so again, I think this requires really naming issues if we want to have any chance at tapping then community expertise to help solve them. So you're right, in the Berkner area, and District 2, for those who don't know, has a lot of the Berkner attendance area, not quite all of it. And also not all of District 2 is Berkner, but it's a big overlap.
Right, sure.
And there has been conversation about setting up a task force more around reputation and community engagement, but a piece of it is, if what folks are hearing is about fights, that's not helpful to the learning environment at Berkner.
Absolutely.
And so it's a 2-prong approach here of what can we do to support our administrators and educators on the discipline side, and how can we cultivate a culture within the Berkner High School that we know is there? How can we as community members nurture it, grow it, so that it is enticing to the neighbors who live right there around the high school, so that we see students transfer into Berkner the same way that we have students transfer into our other 3 high schools.
Absolutely.
For me, that data around the transfer in, transfer out numbers was really, it was eye-opening. It was a little bit shocking to see. It's huge. The number of students transferring out of Berkner High School is more than double the number transferring out of the next highest.
And that's tough. In all openness, I worked with Farah Smock, who's the current principal at Berkeley High School, and she's got a massive task. She picked up a school that was in disarray in a number of ways. So this is in no means a way to besmirch or to belittle the job she's doing. So just so you guys understand, in open honesty and clarity is, I'm very much engaged over there, working with some parents who've had their students be assaulted straight out with some horrible videos some of you may have seen. And so that gets to the heart of me as a teacher is discipline management in the classroom, some of that tier one expertise to control that behavior. And so I'm happy to hear that you engage more with the community. I think that's vital in finding solutions.
And can I add too, I'll say Superintendent Branham and the administrators have been doing a great job too with, I think it's still House Bill 6. I don't think it's been replaced by a committee replacement yet.
The Senate has a couple working as well that have some pieces that's been extracted out.
Yes.
We'll see what happens.
Because I didn't realize until more recently just how much the Texas legislature speaks into what discipline can look like. So correcting, what's really inflated to 100+ page document at
Chapter
this
37.
Point. Exactly. So
lovely book.
So Superintendent Branham, I know, has been a leader along with some others from the North Texas region in addressing that so that we can give our educators the autonomy they need to be able to manage a classroom.
That's a fantastic point. And there is a coalition of about 30 ISDs. Tabitha Branham, as a superintendent of Richland ISD, has partnered together with the superintendent of Wiley ISD, I believe. Yeah, thank you. You know better than me. That's awesome. So they're trying to get Chapter 37 modified and renewed. One of the things to say, and I'm sorry, it just popped in my head, so I didn't prepare this question earlier. One of the interesting parts was to have an online option for misbehaving students. So if you have a student who's a little hooligan, perhaps, in your classroom and repeated issues, disturbing the learning environment for 28 other students. Well, Charlie, take yourself up and get on home. Let mommy and daddy deal with you, or mommy or the caretaker, or whoever can deal with you at home, but put you online where now you're able to learn through the screen and maybe have the camera on the teacher. I mean, it worked for COVID, right? We had everybody at home learning. Not the most ideal for sure. And trust me, not the most ideal for that student who's misbehaving. But the delta on the improvement for the 28 other students, I think, will be quite phenomenal. So an online learning, I'll try to speak English, an online learning part of the discipline chapter. What are your thoughts on that? I'm sorry, I just sprang that on you there.
No, yeah, that's not one I had heard about. I would want to take a look because you named, this is what we did during COVID. I think we're still understanding what was the full impact of learning during COVID.
80-20 rule, right?
So would want to make sure. But I think in any sort of discipline situation where a student has to leave the classroom, ultimately the goal is how do we get that student back to the learning environment in a way that's going to be helpful for the one and for the 28.
While addressing maladaptive behaviors.
Exactly.
That's the key, right? The maladaptive behaviors. And again, I would go even one step further to say that the number of kids in a classroom any one day that create this learning environment problem is maybe 2 students. If you have a really difficult class, it's going to be 4 students. So that really, the numbers are very small. And so hopefully we can find a way to do that. And I'm excited to hear that as a board trustee, you would bring that into focus. The engagement part with the community, if I could just tell you again, I said it on my other video, I'll say on this video, I'll say on the next video as well, is we did give, I personally, not we don't work together, but personally gave invites to several of the school board members running for office, the incumbents, and were declined for an open forum. I wanted to do it at Berkeley High School where we could have an open, honest discussion without a bunch of rules and this and that and the other thing and sifting of the answers. Didn't want to do that. So when I opened up to this format where you see now Ms. Hughes and you'll see Ms. Bonavida and then you'll see Ms. Naria come and speak, is I also opened that up to him, still do open that up to him to have this conversation, because I think we, to Ms. Hughes' point earlier, we need to engage with the community. And I don't know of very many community members that speak more on these issues than I do, or has a voice to help those who are disaffected and to try and bring them back together with the ISD. I mean, that's what you and me and the ISD was all about. So thank you for that point on community engagement. So to then segue, we spoke about Superintendent Branham a minute ago. One of the key roles of the board is to hire the superintendent and to hold them accountable, including through the annual evaluation. So what metrics would you employ as a board member to include in that evaluation to ensure that all of our students are learning and, as our North Star puts it, meeting or exceeding their academic growth goals?
Yes. So I've mentioned it in some other formats, and I'll keep mentioning it. In 2022, our school board, which I believe it's the same 7 members, passed 5-year goals. Every district in Texas has to pass 5-year goals. So we did ours in 2022. They're in place through 2027. And at the time, the discussion around those goals was, these are good, but they're a minimum.
Yes.
But that was the conversation that was happening, was we can't wait to blow these goals out of the water. I hope I have to come back and reset these goals because they're not high enough. So this, at this point, we have 2 years worth of STAR data. I'm sorry, I should step back. 2 of those goals are around 3rd grade STAR performance, reading and math. The 3rd is around college and career and military readiness.
That's that famous CCMR.
CCMR,
We
yes.
love the acronym
yes.
in education, for sure.
But yeah, so we have now 2 years worth of data. We'll get the 3rd here as this school year comes to a close. And specifically on those 3rd grade reading and math, making sure our students are at grade level, meeting or exceeding their growth goals. We've kind of stagnated, and in some spots we've declined.
Sure.
And it's not startling yet.
No.
And this is a spot where this would definitely be a metric that I would want to make sure we're raising, not just in the superintendent evaluation, but regularly at the board meetings to understand, are we on track? There are a couple good interim goals that we test and check before we get to 3rd grade STAR. So how do the circle results look? How are MAP scores looking? Is everything in line?
Circle, circle, circle.
Is everything showing that we're moving toward what we want to see in 3rd grade? That's where I like the numbers. I like to be able to take a look and say, well, if we're meeting what we think we should be in pre-K, what's happening between pre-K and 3rd grade? Because then we can talk about what do we do to address it.
Sure.
And I think you asked too to make sure for every student, these goals are already broken out too into, depending on ethnicity or economically disadvantaged, special education, emergent bilingual learners. We have goals for all of them.
We do.
I want to make sure we're not just hitting that top line number, but that we're hitting for all of our students. There's been some conversation about constraints. I think that would be an appropriate constraint, is we want to hit this goal for 3rd grade reading, and we can't do it by only elevating one student population so high above the average that it pulls everything up.
I think the old saying was, all means all y'all, something like that. What was it?
All means all, and it should.
Yeah. All y'all. And that's the difficulty we have sometimes in education is to maneuver with that, because we just highlighted in the previous question maladaptive students and their behavior. Well, we want to reach those students too, don't get me wrong.
Right.
By looking at the online section, we're not saying just shovel, forget about them. Yeah, take them out of the classroom.
Right. How do we help these students as well meet and exceed their academic growth
And
goals?
that's not easy, by the way, because we do talk about our emergent bilingual. We do talk about our sub-pops who are on the lower end of the score spectrum for good reason and valid reasons that have nothing to do with academic ability. Just if you don't speak the language and then you're hearing somebody teaching that language, I speak 3 languages, just none of them useful in Texas. Even my English is a bit suspect. But at the end of the day, we see how we can get to address those concerns. But at the same time, we've also got the top tier kids. We don't want to I've always said this to the school board, you can bring the bottom up and that's one way to close the gap. But if you bring the bottom up, bring the top down, it makes your gap look real good. But we want to remember the top students as well. And that's the difficulty with juggling. And it's literally
well, and
juggling.
Parts of it are, the reality for our district. I think it's been mentioned. We're a majority minority district. We're majority economically disadvantaged. If the strategies we have in place aren't working for economically disadvantaged students, then it's not working for our RISD.
Absolutely.
So
fourth most diverse in Texas.
Yeah.
I forget what the nationwide number was, but it's pretty much up there.
So I think there are ways to ask these questions and have conversations that don't need to be confrontational. I mean, I think superintendent is doing a fantastic job, and we need to be able to say, so let's talk about these numbers and what can we do that's different?
Right, and it's a focus on that, right?
Exactly.
What do they say? We focus on what we measure. And so that was really where that question goes to, is to say, what are we going to measure? Because that's the part that the superintendent will focus on. And making a coherent plan. And again, in open honesty to my folks out there viewing this, is whilst we like to have a superintendent evaluation, we're working right now, at least I'm working right now, again, I keep saying we, this is the royal we, I'm working on a board of trustee evaluation document that'll come out before the election to sort of take a look at how have our board members done in meeting those needs, right? It shouldn't just be up to the superintendent Branham to be held to these metrics because she gets paid. well, we're going to vote for these folks to represent us and to make sure that we are hitting those metrics and getting our students learning, because that's what it's all about, beyond everything else. And so we'll start with the two incumbents who are in this race, so we can handicap that a little bit and see how they're doing. So that's something I'll be bringing out shortly with the You and Me and the ISD podcast. So moving from that fun, exciting, looking at evaluations to the next second most favorite topic of everybody out there, which is finances.
Yes, yes.
Finances are a bit tough in these inflationary times. RISD, though, is fortunate to be in a better position than most districts. Thanks to David Pate and his team, he's done an amazing job. I know that the budget's well within RISD, probably better than most, other than his team, clearly. How would you help prioritize the expenditures? We have a number of budget meetings throughout the year. And so to help the district prioritize that is not a direct responsibility of the school board, for sure. But how would you do that with both the M&O side of it and the INS side of it without getting mired, of course, in the intricacies of both of those?
And I'm
Just
glad that your
question, no problem.
I'm glad that your question lifts up Mr. Pate and the work that he and his department do. It's been really good to get to know him over the last year, because school finance is not only challenging, it's also extremely confusing. So I'm glad that you've broken it out here into the M&O, so maintenance and operations versus the interest and sinking. Not going to go into all of it here, but we've got basically two pieces of the funds that come from property taxes that can be used for very specific things. So on the M&O side, that's where, well, for both sides, I think keeping student learning and student outcomes, sometimes it's harder to make a direct tie, but there are some that we clearly can. So on the M&O side, valuing our people, our educators, our personnel who are in the buildings, interacting with our students. We know that that teacher in the classroom is going to have an extremely significant, if not the most significant, impact on how the student performs.
Sure.
So we've got to make sure that we are valuing our educators so that we attract and retain the very best teachers here in Richardson ISD.
Good to see you, by the way.
Yes, yes.
13%. Amazing.
Excellent. So that would for sure be the priority on the M&O side, as well as then instructional materials, making sure that we have high quality materials there with our students. This is the what of their learning. On the INS side, so this is the construction spending. This is paying off the debt from bonds. I want to make sure that we're not deferring maintenance. I think it's an easy thing, not easy, it's a quick thing to look at because paying for new HVAC systems or pipes is not glamorous. It's not easy to sell to the public, but the average age of our buildings, they're over 50 years old. We're seeing wear and tear on things like plumbing. And ultimately, if we don't take care of the buildings that we do have, that's the learning environment where our kids are. So they don't need a study to say kids learn better when they have running water and functioning.
What? Stop it. Stop it. Running water. What is this nonsense you speak of?
It's one of those where, it's the same challenge I have in my day job. We have, 400 churches. They each have property.
Wow.
It's never fun to replace those sorts of things, but you got to do it because it's not going to get cheaper if we wait until the next.
400 buildings right now?
So across, the Horizon Texas Conference, I'm at this church. We've got, 400-ish
so just about
churches.
57 buildings? That's like a side hobby.
Exactly. Now, I don't have to make all the HVAC decisions, but I can understand the benefit to addressing things while it's an emergent problem instead of an emergency.
Yeah, and in my neighborhood, we have the local elementary school is literally 100 yards that way. And they have helicopters come in and they land the HVAC units on top of the roof. So amazing. And I'm doing the bond study right now. Mm-hmm. I'm on the bond committee to examine what our needs are. And we have what's called the FCI, which is a Facilities Condition Index. Mm-hmm. And for our district, when they ran that 4 or 5 years ago now, it looked abysmal. So we've got some hard decisions to make. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be doing another video about the bond here lately, so I won't get mired into that. But thank you for that perspective on how you'd help with those finances to prioritize and get them stacked behind sensible and common sense ideas of balancing these things, because sometimes we do get out of whack, for sure. So when it comes to then curriculum instruction, the other part of the maintenance and operation, of course, what careful steps should we take with how the district, and of course all Texas schools, receive textbooks in the future? So House Bill 1605 was the one that limits us to only online text. But I was informed through a meeting with the administration just the other day that we can actually request hard copies of those, which is great.
Yes.
So that was a little caveat to the story there that I realized later. So we haven't got those yet. We haven't ordered them as soon as they become available. So as soon as I get my hands on them, hey, that's another podcast. Okay. So if we use the state of Texas for these through 1605, we get a $60 per student supplement. How would you utilize that resource to help our students, again, reach their potential?
Yeah, so I think it's important to recognize variety of learning styles. And I'm glad that you found the same thing that I did, because I was like, I think we can get hard copy books. So I'm glad to hear that, yes, we found the same thing, and that it plays into that learning style and retention. So making sure that we're not limited by the state to just scrolling. I am not a neuroscientist, but I know our brains take information in differently, the scrolling versus having something tangible in your hands. And we've got students who I'm sure benefit from kinetic learning, from being able, or kinesthetic learning, I'm sorry, from being able to hold.
Kinesthetic is kinetic, though.
Yes.
Physics.
Okay.
Sorry.
Being able to hold and write.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be online only. We also want to make sure that we are, preparing digital citizens to go out into the world. So I think a balance there. The bigger question for me with curriculum is I want to make sure when there are things like $60 per student dangled out there, that we're also taking into account the cost of changing curriculum, the value add that a new curriculum would bring. I do want.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt you. We just had what do they call it? A technical glitch. But in the interest of making this an open debate and open conversation, we've decided not to cut and chop things
we'll just
out.
Keep on rolling.
There are some people that do believe in cutting and chopping. So at the end of the day, that's what happens. Let me just one moment to get my technical assistance here to grab the. Thank you. So all of this to say.
So now we're getting into copyrighted law and order.
Right, exactly. No law and order. I don't know why that happened. Sorry, these things. See, even the best laid plans of mice and men. Sorry.
I guess ultimately, I would not want to see us change curriculum purely for a $60 per student enticement.
Right. No, for sure. And if we can, and I know you addressed it at one of the last meetings, so I want to segue a little bit into talking about that. There's this blue bonnet curriculum, blue bonnet learning, and how they're using religious ideas into the text. And I think some people have perhaps jumped at that as oh no, we're going to proselytize the kids, versus giving them a perspective, on a historical perspective, on where these things come from. Right.
So I want to clarify, because I've answered it a few places. So I'm not in favor of moving RISD to the Blue Bonnet curriculum. And you and I were talking as well right before this, that there is a place for stories from religious backgrounds, from religious faiths, to be a part of a curriculum. So the example that I was raising was Noah's Ark, and how it connects to the Epic of Gilgamesh, that this is a part of literary and historic learning, and that we wouldn't say an entire curriculum is out of line because it references Noah's Ark. Similarly, we were talking about, the Code of Hammurabi should be up there with the 10 Commandments. Here we're talking about the history of law and justice. We're not talking about tenets of faith.
Right.
And so being able to understand where a curriculum is addressing literary allusions, art allusions that our students are going to need in order to be able to, for example, exceed on the AP test, versus a curriculum that is stepping over that line and turning the state into an arbiter of faith. That's inappropriate.
Very different things, for sure. And thanks for clarifying that. I know you've spoken on it before, but it's always good.
Absolutely.
What did I say? Rather than implicit, be explicit.
Be explicit.
Doc A down at Eastfield, he passed away a few years back, but a great math professor. He'd always say, you want to be explicit in math. Explicit, not implicit. So kudos to him.
There we go.
Memory lives on. So then, under all of those, to understand, as a board member, you alluded to it multiple times earlier. I alluded to it when talking about the fact that the current incumbent in that board position is not coming on camera to have these conversations. Not able to engage on this level. So as a board member, how do you then connect with the community? That's the whole idea behind you and me and the ISD, that connection with the community and the ISD. How do we make that happen so that we bring out better outcomes for our students? And so if you could, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do a 90-second elevator pitch, if you will, to throw out one of your ideas or proposals, and how would you sell that to the community? How would you connect with the community? How would you express them why this would be a great thing for them?
Sure. So my idea is actually tied to the idea of how do we better connect with the community. So my big takeaway from the last year is that listening sessions, these meetings that happen in the Red Brick Building, shouldn't only be happening in moments of emotional decision making or divisiveness. I would love to see
Yes.
our school board and our city officials come together to do regular town halls when things are just normal, just to hear from folks in the in-between time. And this is something that I've talked with a DISD trustee, who several folks said, this guy is doing school board trusteeship really well. He has introduced this to great success. So it's this school board member, the city council member who covers their area. Sometimes the mayor comes, but not always because it's Dallas. And that they just regularly have town halls and hear from their shared constituencies, because the other piece is a lot of times folks don't know who handles what. Right. And so having the right people in the room to say that's the city or that's the school district and we hear you could save a lot of heartache on the back end of trying to build a relationship while also in a highly emotional moment. So I would love to see more channels like that are set up, in addition to having folks out in the community at school events. Don't always expect the parents to come to the district.
Right.
I think that Superintendent Branham and her cabinet do a great job with that.
She does.
And I would love to see even more of our trustees. I've gotten to know a lot of the trustees this year because I see them at my kids' school events.
Oh, that's great.
And that's something I'm excited to do more of.
And I really do like that the trustees get out and interact with the community. I do think you're right. We need to normalize disagreement, by the way. So we'd sit here and say, well, I don't think you like that. Well, I don't like this. But not have it elevate and rise to the fact where we're having fisticuffs or calling names or online campaigns, etc. I do think we need to include all voices. There's a lot of talk about EDI and equity, diversity, inclusion. And I think that if the true ends to that was to include people and get people together talking, then I'd be 120% shouting from the mountaintop. But I think a lot of times best laid plans, right? And so it descends into sections of our community who then rile up against each other, and it becomes a good Afrikaans word, a gemors, which just means a mess. And so basically saying, yeah, I love the idea to connect with the community. I wish more of our board members would do that. And I know several who do, several who have met and discussed with people who are very politically divergent from them and will still engage and discuss with those folks. And I know several that do not. So I'm excited for this election. I think that you stepping up, by the way, thank you for that service. To put yourself forward is not an easy thing. And to hear some of the background noise that you do is not easy. So I do appreciate that. Now, I did offer to do the same length of time that we did for the other candidate. We've come up a little short. I think we're about 7 minutes short. So welcome to talk for another 7 minutes.
I don't know that I have another 7 minutes in me, but I will say.
But wrap up your speech. Tell us a little bit about why Pam Hughes, District 2.
Yeah, and it actually dovetails with what you were just talking about. So at this point, I think I personally have knocked on 800 plus doors.
Wow.
The campaign has been we'll hit our 2000th house this weekend. Just meeting neighbors, just going out to say, hey, did you know that you have a school board election coming up this spring? Here's who I am and why I'm running. And one of the most common conversations has been what you were just saying, that folks are looking for someone, because District 2 is diverse.
Sure.
And I don't mean that as a euphemism for anything. I mean, it's Prairie Creek, it's Big Springs, so it's Garland, it is Mark Twain, it's everywhere in between. And folks want a trustee who can talk to anyone from across District 2.
Sure.
Hear what they're saying, take them seriously, and then take their stories back to the decision-making table.
Absolutely.
And that only happens if we, are willing to make that first step of, I'm going to their doors to talk to them. I'm not saying, come meet me where I am. I'm going to them. And it has been some of the best conversations I've had. And people really don't expect it. They're taken aback when they realize, of someone from the, they think I'm from the school district, and I have to clarify, I'm not elected yet, but that no one from the schools has ever come to talk to them before.
And yours is all volunteer, right? When you go out and have people knock on
That's
your doors,
right.
and not paying anybody to do that, as some
Not paying
campaigns
anybody.
do.
Yeah.
Not saying anybody currently. I'm just saying I've learned in years gone by that people pay folks to go out and knock on doors, say vote for this candidate. It's an interesting thing to do.
No, it's been really wonderful this season to just see friends and neighbors show up from across District 2 and across RISD. But yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because no, all of my financial support, have limited that to just folks who either live or work here in the district.
Oh, okay. So you're no outside districts, no big money coming in, no PAC supporting you, no
PACs,
Republican Party, no Democrat Party,
no party support.
No Looney Party.
There is one on my filing. It looks like a California address. This is a gentleman with 2 houses, and I said, I wish you would have used your Prairie Creek address on your checks, but he didn't. But that's the only one. No,
you
no
know,
parties,
California
no PACs.
people like coming.
Exactly.
What do they say? What's that saying? Oh, don't California my Texas.
Exactly. Now he's Texasing their California.
No, that's
so
exactly
he's
right.
He's doing retirement well.
and I yeah, as you can tell, I'm not from here originally, but I got here as fast as I could. So there we go. Thank you so much,
Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Hughes, Pam Hughes, for joining us. District 2, early voting starts April 22nd. And of course, as always, you can vote on Election Day, which is May 3rd. Please get out and vote. We don't want these elections decided by 2,000-3,000 people. Although it's impressive to go knock on that many doors, it's not so impressive to just have that many people decide an entire election. So thank you so much for being a part of this one. I'm Euan Blackman, your host for Euan, Me, and the ISD.